My name is Helen J. Owens, and it was my honor, privilege, and pleasure to serve as the 20th International Grand Bacillus of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. I served from 2000 to 2004, bringing in the millennium, and it was a wonderful experience as I watched our organization grow, our sisters develop, and our undergraduates go from being students to being leaders in their communities.
Dr. Owens, could you share your journey into educational leadership and the obstacles you encountered as a Black woman in this field?
My journey began, I always tell in my story the fact that I grew up as a sharecropper's daughter in Tennessee, and we were not poor, we were poor. But always my parents said to us, it's not where you begin, it's where you end. And so we knew that there was a better way for us to make a living, better places for us to go and be, and we worked toward that. With that in mind, when I graduated high school, I went to Tennessee State University my first year, and I majored in speech and drama. After that year, I transferred to Lane College, which was a college in my hometown. And it was a perfect fit for me. I was not aware at the time that there was such a thing, but Lane College was a perfect fit for me. I was majoring in speech and drama at Tennessee State University because they told me I spoke well and I could do a little acting. I didn't realize there were at that time no Black female radio people, very few in acting, and so I don't know where I would have landed had I continued there. However, when I got to Lane, I decided to major in sociology. I majored in sociology because it was my intent to change the world and make it better. I didn't realize at the time that there were very few Black social workers, and very few of them were certainly in my area. One day, Mrs. Perry, who was my education teacher, passed to me in the hall, and she asked me if I was getting certified to teach. And I said, oh no ma'am, I don't want to be no teacher, I ain't gonna never be no teacher. She said, Miss Johnson, get your certificate. It is better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And in those days, we did what our instructors told us to do. Being obedient, I got my teaching certificate. And after getting my teaching certificate and working in the field, I discovered that teaching was what the good Lord put me on this earth to do. And so I watched those as I moved into the profession. I watched those who were successful and what they did. And I looked at those who were not successful and determined that some of the things that I saw them doing, I would not do. I tried to practice skills that would move me forward, such as fairness, collaboration. I kept up with the latest trends. I attended conferences, and I made myself available to help with my boots on the ground wherever I was needed. However, I found after I got into the profession, I realized that I wanted to be an administrator. At that time, there were not many women administrators, and there were certainly not many Black women administrators. But I moved forward and got the certification to be an administrator. And I remember so very clearly that the first time I applied for a position as an administrator in my hometown, I was beat out by a white man who was known to be dumb. And it hurt my feelings so bad. But I did not let it stop me. I kept working. And ultimately, I got a position as an administrator. It was not easy because there were certain parameters that it was felt that the women teachers must stay in. When I became a principal, I was excited to go and tell my dad about it. And the first thing he said to me was, now Helen, you are asking for this man's job. Don't be asking a lot of folks to tote them boxes and do things that you're gonna have to do. I don't think I responded, but I knew then he gave me a piece that was important to me. if you're going to ask for this job, do this job. That became my mantra. However, I learned that if you're nice to people, people will be nice to you. And I could get a man most of the time to carry any box for me that needed to be carried. So the defined parameter for what women could do, simply based on what they had historically been allowed to do, was a big portion of what I had to go through. Another piece was the assumption that some jobs are just made for men and not made for women. I didn't buy that, because just as I expected my husband to cook dinner when I was not available, he didn't always do it. It was my expectation. He expected me to put some of my money in the pot to pay the bills. And so it works both ways. And then that was important for me to establish as I moved forward. Some other stumbling blocks that you find when you are going, that I tried to work with, was, as much as possible, avoid confrontations. If it's something that you don't have to deal with, sometimes you can turn your back and act as if you don't see it. That worked well for me as an administrator. Got me in a little trouble sometimes, every now and then, but not often. And most of the time, the situation worked itself out. So for women in particular who are viewed as persons who kind of like to be troublemakers and stirring stuff, it's important for you to establish who and what you're going to be and how you are going to handle situations. It's important to let your efficiency show. Now, don't be braggadocious. You know, I don't mind saying that I'm pretty good at what I do, because I work at it, and I work at it hard. If I accept a position, I am going to do my best to perform well in that position. If I fail, it is not going to be because I did not try, because I'm going to be trying to do the job well. So do not mind. Women have been taught that you're kind of supposed to stay behind the curtain, and you're supposed to be modest, and I agree with all that. But sometimes we walk in pathways that require us to take a different stance. I remember the first job that I got as a principal in an all-white setting. The federal government had ruled that a small town above my town had to hire a black principal at its largest white elementary school. I applied for the job and I had no experience. The three persons selected to get the position were two black men principals, both of whom had experience, and me with no experience. Well, I was given the job. I'm sure the black man felt just like I felt about that white man when I got the job. But I understood that I got the job because they felt that with no experience and being a woman, I couldn't survive. And they would say to the federal government that we tried. But they didn't know that I was a praying woman and that God was on my side. And so I went into the situation, and I was successful, stayed 7 years, and left when I got ready. And so the piece becomes, be prepared for the opportunity when it presents itself. But what it also said to me was, I know that God knew that the principalship in my hometown was not the best place for me at the time. And he also knew that I wasn't totally prepared to do that job. So he let me wait for a few more years and get this job that I was totally prepared for, and that just catapulted me forward in the administration field, because I did an excellent job that they had to acknowledge. And I knew that it was not just about me, but it was the hand of God and the blessings on my life. And so it is that as we move forward, we will find ourselves in situations where we don't understand today what is going on. But if we truly be the best that we can be, continue to grow, and allow God's hands to be in the works, we usually find ourselves arriving at the top and being proud and doing a good job that we can.